Welcome to episode 51 of the Half Point Per podcast. I am your host, Evan, joined by Dalton. And yes, we are live this time, Johnny. I didn't mess it up for a second time tonight. Joined by Johnny Pham. Made the joke in the lost recording. Gonna make it again. Mr. 32 words per minute typer, Johnny Pham. How you doing?
I would like it to be known I am probably hovering 80s to 90s, and I am faster than Dalton.
I like how the first time through, you just said you wanted to be known that you were joking. This time, what do you take a typing test in the 30 seconds that it took to actually get live?
Typing test is only like 45 seconds, so I think we had plenty of time. I could do one live if we want to, because we're sharing screen, just wanted to be known.
I'm concerned on how invested you are and how quickly you can type words.
I'm just concerned with how you type words in general on a keyboard with like your two fingers.
Gets the job done. That's all that matters.
Okay. Right.
We've got a fun show today. As I mentioned in the Twitter tease, and if you're watching on YouTube, you see the title of the video and in the podcast. Gave it away. We are re-ranking the top 24 through, I guess, 6 weeks. 6 weeks and about 6 million injuries later. We're going to go back through and re-rank where we see everyone from this point until the rest of through the rest of the season. But first, I mean, where else could we start this week besides a little more Who's That Pokemon? I know we had some fun doing that last week. We each have, I think, Dalton, you brought two. I brought two.
Yeah, brought two.
All right. I'll be a little choppy there. You still there? Still hear us?
Yeah, I did bring two. Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. I will let you go ahead and go first then, but not without playing my favorite clip.
Who's that Pokemon?
I was really concerned you were just going to send me out there without that. You were setting me up. I was like, oh, no.
Absolutely not. I would play that twice before I forget to play it.
Don't say the name. Don't say the name. All right. This player is a top 10 tight end. He's ran a route on 71% of the team's dropbacks and is targeted on 20% of those routes. He has an average depth of target of 9 yards and has 22% of the team's total air yards. Who is that Pokemon?
There's no shot I'm going to know who that is just based on those numbers.
Dalton Schultz.
Not Dalton Schultz. He only has 2 touchdowns on the season.
Oh. How many touchdowns did you say this guy had?
2.
Oh, this guy only has 2 touchdowns. Okay, I was going to say Dawson Knox, but he has more than 2 touchdowns. Is this a trick? Has this guy not played for a couple of weeks? Logan Thomas?
Nope, he has played every game this season.
Okay.
I give you one last hint, but the predominant of his snaps are not played in line as a tight end.
Wait, did you say what division he's in?
Oh, he is in the AFC. Sorry, I forgot about that.
Okay. You know what? I think you're trying to throw us off here and go with the obvious. Is it Travis Kelce?
It is not Travis Kelce.
Okay. Who is it?
It's Mike Gesicki.
Mike Gesicki. You know, he started off like barely on the field week 1, and we're like, okay, I think you can just drop him. But now, like, looking at my best ball team where he and Gronk are both on my team, they've only scored it's only like a 1-point difference. Obviously, Gronk has missed the last couple of weeks, but it's pretty impressive how quickly he's kind of rebounded here.
Well, to be fair, when I was doing this, I looked at it. Since week 2, the Dolphins have ran the second most 12 personnel in the league. And I think a big part of that is because they have no wide receivers left at this point. So his utilization has been pretty necessary for them to have pass catchers.
Yeah. Who would have thought that a team with Devontae Parker and Will Fuller would have injury concerns at wide receiver?
And Preston Williams, don't leave him out of this.
This is like the meme of the guy who just shot the guy and then looking at the camera saying, who could have done this? That's like the Dolphins GM and coach right now.
Oh my God. All right, Evan, who do you got?
All right. So my first one, you may or may not know, just put these together about 10 minutes ago. So I'm not going to have your fancy little air yards and snap share and all that, but we've got some good old-fashioned stats for you.
We got John Gruden on the call, apparently.
We do not have John Gruden on this call, my good sir. That has a lot of negative connotations did not have 2 weeks ago. This is a running back. He's a top 10 running back. he's in the NFC. So he's a top 10 back despite only playing in 5 games this season. And just as a little note, once we figure out who this guy is, he gets Detroit and Houston the next 2 weeks. So he is probably going to even higher in these ranks, I would imagine. He's played 80% or more of the team snaps in every game he's played, and he's topped 15 touches in every game he's played. So he's a top 10 back. He's had great volume, only played 5 games, and he's a top 10 back despite only scoring 1 total touchdown on the season.
Is he in the? You said he's in the NFC.
NFC.
Only 1 touchdown. He's missed 1 game.
Mm-hmm.
Is it Darrell Henderson?
It is Darrell Henderson.
Yes, let's go. All the reason I really know that is I play the person who was Cooper Kupp this week, and when you said he has Detroit, I was like, well, that really narrows it down.
Wait,
Yeah,
he only has 1 touchdown?
I think so. Am I looking at it wrong? Are you seeing
Oh,
something different?
I just kind of felt like whenever Eli had him, he scored like 3 touchdowns on me.
Now you're making
Is
me second
what it
guess
felt
myself,
like.
Johnny. I did a lot of very hard research.
He has 4 rushing
Yeah,
touchdowns.
I love
Full of
that.
lies.
All right.
He had
has
1
one receiving
receiving
touchdown,
yeah,
that's
which is fair, but
Yeah, although I'm pretty sure I was looking at this on Sleeper. Okay, well you still guessed it, so and
Oh
that was last hit. First couple are still good. You know what? I forgot to even play it, so it was just gypped from the beginning. I said that I was not going to forget. You know what?
Who's that Pokemon?
It was Darrell Henderson. Now, Dalton, a second time in a row for your first guy up. Let's have it.
Who's that Pokemon?
I'm ashamed of myself here. All right, give me.
At least you didn't say his name. This player,
The first guy that does that's in real trouble.
This guy plays in the NFC. He is the definition of boomer bust. He has 3 finishes in the top 12 of PPR wide receivers and 3 finishes outside the top 60 in wide receivers. He's a top 40 PPR wide receiver, and he's only run 75% of the routes per drop back with his quarterback, and 32% of all of his fantasy points have come on 3 plays this season.
In the NFC,
Yes.
is it CeeDee Lamb?
It is not CeeDee Lamb. I hope CeeDee Lamb is not finished outside the top 63 times, but that
Honestly,
might be the case.
he legitimately has had like 2 or
Yeah.
3 really bad games. That
Yeah.
was the first one that came to mind.
I will tell you, he is not the wide receiver 1 on his team.
Christian Kirk.
No, but that's a really good guess.
Yeah, that was a great guess. That would have probably been my next guess. Gosh, I don't know.
This guy probably went undrafted.
Undrafted, and where is he rank receivers wise? Did you say?
He's top 40. I think he's 38. If I'm just going to give you the exact number.
I have to resist the urge not to switch my tab over to the rankings that I have on my left screen here. Johnny, any ideas? Undrafted, top 40 receiver.
We're doing top 40s for who's that Pokemon nowadays?
He has 3 top 12 finishes, though.
How many touchdowns does he have?
I'd have to look. Let me check for you.
Man, this is. I really want to get one on Dalton's right, but Dalton's hints are just so much harder.
He just threw just so much. You had just great stats. He just threw like 80 things I didn't know.
Has
Like
2 touchdowns.
Is it Tyler Lockett?
No, that's another good guess.
is it
Yeah.
Henry Ruggs?
No, he's in the AFC.
I think.
Oh dang it! God, that makes
I
sense.
think we're out of guesses on that note.
It's KJ Osborne.
KJ Osborne. Yeah, I would not have guessed that in a million years.
I hate you.
I am not surprised that he has however many percent of his points on 3 plays.
32%.
He had like 2 long touchdown receptions
Mm-hmm.
in one game, and then he had a touchdown the other. He had the winning touchdown. Actually,
Yeah, he had the
that
winning
day.
touchdown, which made him the 11th wide receiver in PPR last week.
Jeez, yeah, the top 12. I would never have guessed. He's been top 12 3 times.
3 times.
That's just an indictment on how inconsistent receiver is week to week.
It
No
is
offense
a
to KJ Osborne.
horrible indictment.
We
I agree.
always kind of talk about now how it's like those top, because running back, it's always feels like, oh, it's so unreliable. Just take a receiver in the mid rounds. Like, well, you're going to get points out of those receivers, but unlike some of those running backs, but you're never gonna know when. A lot of those
Yeah.
guys you just are never gonna start on the right week.
Exactly.
Okay. Can't forget this time. Last guy, my second Who's That Pokemon.
Who's that Pokemon?
This guy is a quarterback. He's a top 20 quarterback this season. He's averaged 11 or more pass yards or yards per pass play the last 2 weeks. He's actually, I'll give you his exact numbers. Hopefully you haven't looked at the top 20 quarterbacks and remember it too well. He's QB 17 on the season, QB 13 the last 2 weeks. And he's only thrown 1 interception so far this season.
This season?
Mm-hmm. And he has 4 or more rushing attempts in 3 different games. He's
What
played every
division?
game too. He's played every game. He's in the AFC.
Is it Ryan Tannehill?
No, it is not.
$11 yards per pass attempt.
Mm-hmm. The last 2 weeks, and he's QB 17 now. Was QB 13 the last 2 weeks. So he basically went from no shot you're even considering starting him to legit streaming option just based on the stats the last couple of weeks here in the AFC.
And he's only thrown 1 pick all year.
Only thrown 1 pick all year, and he started every game.
Is it Teddy Bridgewater?
It is not Teddy Bridgewater. He threw multiple picks just in the fourth quarter alone the other day.
I didn't watch the fourth quarter. That game was so out of hand.
Well, I didn't either, but Red Zone kept showing it. So I kept seeing it. Johnny was watching the whole thing while he was watching CeeDee Lamb destroy his hopes and dreams on his phone.
Is it Joe Burrow?
Nope. Johnny, do you have a guess? I'll give you one.
You said it was AFC, right?
AFC.
Is it Derek Carr?
Not Derek Carr. So
No.
you're going to be shocked that this guy, and I even double checked since I flubbed the 4 touchdowns to 1 touchdown. This guy has actually only thrown 1 pick this season. Carson Wentz. Can you believe that? 1 pick for Carson Wentz at this point in the season?
Oh, wait, isn't he in the NFC?
Sir, he plays for the Colts.
Oh, wow. Yep, nope. I just forgot divisions for a second. Nope. I will just mute my.
Didn't even finish his sentence before he muted himself.
And to everybody who takes advice from this podcast, I'm sorry.
Isn't it pretty wild that because like the first 2 weeks it was like, okay, I guess the Colts are just checking down all the time again this year, even with Carson Wentz. And Wentz's reputation is like this guy is just gonna throw a lot of picks, make a lot of terrible decisions. He's thrown the ball down the field the last 2 weeks, and he only has 1 pick the whole year. I mean, I don't know. If he has another good game this week, like he's a legit like streaming option maybe until he starts playing poorly again.
Yeah, which is now, I would say.
Who do they have this week? I didn't even look.
I haven't even looked, but I mean, I guess they do get Houston again, and they get the Titans, although they look like a world beater. Let's see. He gets
Play the Niners, then Titans, then Jets, then Jaguars. I mean, Titans, Jets, Jaguars. The next 3 weeks after this one, if you have a stash spot, you could be
he could be
couple
worth
weeks
it.
stream there.
Wow, I can't believe he only has 1 pick. I would have just thought he had more.
I know. As soon as I saw 1 pick and 11 yards per pass I was like, okay, he will literally never guess that Carson Wentz somehow is combined to do both those 2 things.
Yeah. Oh my God. Well,
All right. Let's jump into the rankings. John, you can unmute yourself. Your cone of shame can be lifted from your forehead. We're sharing your screen here. I wonder okay. If you're watching on YouTube and you make it full screen, you should be able to see it pretty well. I cannot see it very well on my Streamlabs because it's small, which is unfortunate because that was like half the point of doing this, but it is what it is. Okay, so Johnny's just going to keep track of our top 24, typing them out as we go here. Dalton is going to alternate with me, and we can talk about guys, especially if it's a guy that one of us has a big disagreement on. But Dalton, I'll go first. I think we probably agree on number 1, don't we?
absolutely, Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
It has to be Derrick Henry, right?
Yeah, it's Derrick Henry by a mile.
He just has to be here. I mean, for as much as we doubted him before the season, And as much as that could still end up being correct at some point this year, you just can't predict it. You just have to wait for the wheels to fall off if they ever do this year. I think he's averaging 25.7 points per game through 6 weeks. And I mean, that's just, I'd have to go back and look at McCaffrey's best points per game seasons, but that is at least dead even. I think McCaffrey was around 24, 25 points per game in some of his best years.
Well, and what's more wild is Derrick Henry is not just the number one running back. He is the number one overall fantasy scorer.
He has
half point.
50 more points than the next running back, which is Austin Eckler. 50 more points. I mean, you are getting a running back and you're basically getting two running backs, like two like RB12s in one spot when you play Derrick Henry every week.
Which is just insane. And I'm not going to lie, I was watching the game at the gym on Monday, and I looked over and I saw a big guy on the ground. I was like, oh, well, they finally ran Derrick Henry to the ground. Turns out it was Taylor Lewan, was not Derrick Henry, but I thought he had finally met his maker.
Yeah. Was it Micah Hyde? What Bill's safety was it where
he didn't take the white route and just got destroyed?
Well, he was the last line of defense, and he was just like, okay, I'm just gonna like crumple up into a ball and like get in front of Derrick Henry, and Henry made him absolutely regret that decision and pummeled him on the way to the ground.
It was Hyde. Yeah, it was just absurd.
You know, as someone who has lost every underdog bet I've made the last couple days, I will say the easiest and most stress-free prop bet I've made in the last couple days was Derrick Henry over under 100.5 rushing yards the other day. Literally the one run in the first half, and he was already like at 90 yards by like midway through the second quarter.
Yes, and financially, this podcast is not doing well on prop bets, so please like and subscribe.
Although I will say with underdog, all you have to do is get like 1 out of 5 right, because you win some, especially if you do like 3 or 4 leg parlays or even more. You win so much more than you lose.
That's how they get you.
That is exactly how they get you, and that's how they got me. I've been got. Dalton, who's your number 2?
It's Dalvin Cook. I mean,
you're not worried anymore, Dalvin Cook. We were so worried last week.
Yeah, I was, and then he came out and played a full set of snaps. So
140 yards last week, and still not fully healthy, according to a local newspaper. That was the headline I saw. So just I saw it, and I was like, okay, Dalvin Cook is really good.
Well, that Vikings offense is probably a top 10 offense in the NFL. They just really click well, and Kirk Cousins is playing at a pretty not Kirk Cousins pace, in my opinion. So, I mean, you want shares in it, and their defense is not stopping anybody, but Cook is just the every down back when he gets the chance. So, yeah, he's number 2.
Yep. Nothing more to add there. So, number 3, I think, is where it gets interesting, and you can venture off a couple different ways.
Wait, Evan, your number 2 is also Dalvin Cook?
Yeah, you don't have to keep track of both of ours. We'll have like a cumulative.
Yeah, we're just gonna alternate top 24.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Make it easier on yourself. Just one list. I think number 3 is where you can venture off a couple different ways. I'm going Jonathan Taylor. I'm curious, Dalton, if you agree with Taylor this high up. Where do you have him?
He's my 7, so I don't.
Wow, so you don't. He's the RB4 right now. Not even Frank Reich can slow this guy down. Not even Frank Reich. He had only 14 carries last week, his second fewest of the year. But he ripped off 145 yards, had a monster long run where he showed off the long speed, the power, everything, and then scored like a play or two later. It's his second straight game of more than 100 rushing yards, his third straight game with over 100 scrimmage yards. The touchdowns are finally coming, which we said, eventually this guy is going to start scoring touchdowns after it was so rough the first couple of weeks. And that has happened. And the best part, even though he didn't get the ball a ton, he did play 65% of the snaps in that game the other day. Even though it was a blowout, they could have definitely benched him if they wanted to. That was a season high for him in snap percentage. So you like that. You like that. Taylor he's just so good. And it's really close, I think, like 3, 4, 5. Those guys are all running back, or 3 and 4 are running backs, and 5 I go receiver. It's close, but I think Taylor has the best potential to be top 3 of anybody left.
Yeah, I like him. It's just my concern with everybody I put above him are people who are just getting a better workload. And you said it. I mean, just because I rostered him in DK, and it ended up paying off last week. But it's just very frustrating that they're playing like one of the worst rush defenses in the league, and they're owning the game script, and Jonathan Taylor has 6 carries at the half, and you're just like, what is going on with this team that you're not just going to let him run the ball down Houston?
Carson Wentz 11 yards per attempt, baby. That's what's going on.
Well, when you play Houston, you get that. So,
all right. So that was my 3. Dalton, who do you have as our cumulative number 4?
I have Joe Mixon as number 4.
Wow, you have Mixon higher than me. I have him at 7, and I looked at a couple of other rest of season ranks. I was high. I've seen him as low as like 15, 14, like on Fantasy Pros. So this is the Joe Mixon podcast, like for real now.
Well, and after I made it, I looked around and I was like, wow, he really is not as high, but he's just getting legitimate workhorse workloads, and the Bengals are clicking offensively, and they're not doing this crazy pass rate over expectation the entire game. And so Evan really wants to pull up the Adam Levitan tweet from last week.
So you're telling me that when he only played 18 snaps, that wasn't indicative of what his workload might be going forward in week 6, in week 5, I mean?
Apparently, playing on a bum ankle really means that you're not going to play as much in the week that they said you probably aren't going to get that many touches. But no, and the Bengals offense is something I want shares in, and they're running the ball so frequently in between the 20s. And then when they're throwing the ball in the red zone, they're the second highest pass rate above expectation in the red zone. It's to Joe Mixon. I mean, you can't beat it. And the one reason Chris Evans got the touchdown that wheel route was because Joe Mixon just taking them to the red zone with 2 back-to-back 10-plus yard carries. I mean, the guy could have been there for that play, and then last week he would have been nuclear. I mean, it's just insane.
He was already, I think, 24 points in half-point scoring last week. I don't have his where he's ranked right now. Obviously, he's a little bit lower because he had one game with no touchdown, and then he had the game where he did score a touchdown last week, but only played such a few amount of snaps that still wasn't a great game by his standards. So he out-touched Chris Evans last week. You mentioned Evans got lucky with the touchdown. It was 24-6 until that game turned into a no contest and Mixon was pulled. 5 receptions, more than 50 yards, a season high 20% target share after it was waning a little bit even before he got hurt. It was definitely nice to see out of Mixon. And the thing that, my only retort to the Levitan tweet, because he wasn't wrong. His routes run were going down. It was just funny that he was pointing it out after he played basically no snaps in week 5. It was his receptions, at least his target share were going down. But if you watched that game against the Jags, he split out wide in like every 5 receiver set and ran a curl, and he was open. It's just like other guys were getting open down the field. So he's going to have opportunities in the passing game. He still only played 62% of the snaps because he came out early the other day. So like there's still
in a blowout.
There's still more there, I think, from Mixon. So yeah, I'm with you. I have him 7. I can't believe you have him so high. So my 4, who's now our 5, I've got Alvin Kamara. And Kamara, I believe, I don't have it in front of me, but I think he's like RB 15 right now. He has the bye week to his name though, so like points per game, he's up in the top 10. I think as of right now. He had the just bizarre week 4 where he didn't get a single target, still over 100 rushing yards though, but no targets. And we were and it had been not great in the passing game, and we were starting to kind of wonder, okay, like, is Kamara just not gonna, like, this makes no sense what's happening here. And then in week 5, it's like a typical Alvin Kamara game. 71 rushing yards. He goes 551 through the air, 2 total touchdowns on 21 touches. The guy gets basically 17 to 20 touches. Rolls out of bed and gets that every week. For me, he's top 5, and there's really no talking me out of it.
Yeah, I have him at 6, so we're about the same. I really think the issue is I think the targets are going to be inconsistent without Breeze. And I still do think that offense has a really, really low floor, and I'm just scared of investing in it because
he's just so good. He's just so good. You can't.
Well, he's 6. That's just everybody I have above him are in much better offensive situations and are still getting the same workload he is getting.
I just think that Kamara is better. Like if you're ranking running backs, like Kamara is just good enough. Like he's better than some of these guys, and he's just good enough that I think the talent makes up for it. Splitting hairs here, though. Obviously, Dalton. Who's the next guy up on our list here?
I can't believe I can't say his name yet because he was my 3, and I have to skip him again.
You have to skip him. Well,
I mean, Austin Eckler has to be on this list eventually, right? Go
I
on.
mean,
He's the RB2 in PPR.
You go for it. Why did you skip him so long if he's your 3?
He was my 3. I don't know. I guess I wanted to get Joe Mixon in there first, but
for the record, we disagree. Not shocked. He's my RB15 right now, or not RB15. He's my number 15 overall. Sorry.
So you'd still draft him where he went in redraft?
I think so. I just like their offense has been so good, and I think it's going to still be good. Obviously, I thought it was going to be good before the season. I'm just not sure it keeps up at the pace it's keeping up. We talked about a little bit in previous shows. I'm not sure Eckler is going to get he has every running back rushing touchdown right now. I just don't think that's going to happen. I don't know. It's just been such an efficient, good season for everybody on that offense. I mean, obviously, like Mike Williams, if you're just ranking guys where they are now, like Mike Williams should be in this top 10, and he's not in my top 10.
Yeah, but Eckler's just doing everything you want out of him. I mean, in a game where their offense literally they didn't even play their offense for half the fourth quarter. He still led the team in targets, and he still had a respectable 9 points in PPR for a game where, I mean, they did nothing offensively. And he's getting all of those red zone rushes, which was your main concern coming into the season. He's really nicked that. And then he's just still the pass catcher that we all expect out of him. He's had some amazing catches. So I have him up there. I mean, he's basically what Alvin Kamara has been in years past. He's hyper efficient in the red zone. He's getting the ball both ways, but he's not overutilized at an 80% snap share.
Yeah, he does run between the tackles a lot, and I still just can't help but worry about him from an injury perspective a little bit, just because he's such a smaller guy. But yeah, I mean, I've got him 15 overall, so I've got no hate in my heart for Austin Eckler. I just don't like him as much as you.
Evan called him a top 18 back at the start of the season.
I mean, he could still very well. I think I have RB15, so I think I could still very well be correct when it's all said and done. We'll see.
He's gonna go nuclear and outscore Henry. Just watch.
So my next guy, I'm shocked he's not already on your list. It's Tyreek Hill. This is pretty short for me. He's the wide receiver 2 right now. The Chiefs offense is producing as well as it ever has, basically, from a fantasy perspective. Now, from a real life perspective, if they just cut down the turnovers, then it could really be producing from a fantasy and real life perspective. He's just so good. The Chiefs not looking great at halftime last week, and Mahomes and really Tyreek Hill took over that game from an offensive perspective in the second half. I think I saw this stat. Every reception he's had this year, he's had at least at least a yard of separation. He is just always open, and not just open, but wide open on these catches. And the big plays haven't really happened for him even yet, and he's this high. They've happened in 1 or 2 games. Hasn't been consistent. I still think there's maybe more there for Tyreek Hill. I've got him as my top receiver on the board here.
He is my top receiver, but I have him at 9. And part of the reason for
you went a lot of running back.
Well, and my reasoning was, if we're doing rest of season rankings, there's not that many running backs in the NFL
but there's not that many receivers that you feel confident in from a week-to-week basis.
But I mean, if we were doing redraft from this point, I think you're getting to round 8 and you're looking at Gio Bernard as some of the running backs who are going off the board.
Well, to be fair, if you're truly doing redraft at this point, you've got 10 running backs who are injured. This is just a pure top 24, So
I was just doing rest of season. So CMC isn't on our top. I mean, he's on this list, I'm assuming, but he's not top 12 for me.
It's funny. Yeah, he is on this list. He was not in any other top 24s. I
agree, but he made mine.
We can get to that when we get to it. So who's your next guy here at number 8?
The disrespect he's getting still is feed him Zeke. He's PFF's.
I have 11, so I'm a little lower than you, but I'm still fairly high.
He's PFF's RB8. That Cowboys offense looks like one of the best in the NFL, but they're doing a lot more on the ground. Their offensive line is just bullying defensive lines game in and game out. Doesn't matter if it's Pollard or Zeke in there; they're getting really good yards. But the big thing on Zeke is he's getting all of the red zone touches for that team.
He's playing 75% of the snaps every week, basically. Even though Pollard's been good, he's just not eating into that work share at all.
Yeah. And I mean, Zeke's back to what we expected of him to be. So He's a guy you can start and you can look away from and not worry about what the outcome is going to be week to week unless they play the Bucks again.
Yep. No, and I'm fine with that. He's my next running back up. I just have have receivers, and my next guy I said that my next guy, since we still haven't even got to my 6 yet. My 6 is Devontae Adams, and it's basically a lot of the same as Tyreek Hill. Like Packers offense still doing its usual thing, still really good. Aaron Rodgers is still being a big bully and throwing touchdowns from the 1 yard line frequently to Devontae Adams. He is the only receiver / tight end you trust on a week-to-week basis catching the ball in that offense. It's him and Aaron Jones. That is basically it that you can count on week to week. He's as safe as it gets at receiver, and he's been awesome this year. And he's going to keep being awesome.
Well, he showed he had wheels last week, which I think we forget because we think that Adams is just a guy who gets up and contests those balls, but he took off on a slant. And if he would have caught the ball a little better in stride, he would have gone for like a 70-yard touchdown in that game. So I'm with you on that. He was right after Hill for me. The only guy I had above them remaining was I had Aaron Jones at 8. And so he'd be the 10 on this list. And the only reason for that is, again, I just went heavy with running back because of how banged up the entire NFL is. If I were doing redraft, I'd probably just rank those guys higher in an attempt to flesh out a good starting running back.
Yep, I'm with you on Jones. Just like I said, you can count on 2 weapons week to week in that offense to produce. It's those guys. From a real life perspective, a little troubling if you're talking real football. From a fantasy perspective, do we wish we had more guys that were catching the balls from Aaron Rodgers that we could start? Yeah. But is it great if you have one of those 2 guys? Yeah, it's awesome. And they're super consistent. And yeah, there's no doubting those 2. So my next guy, this is where I've got Kelsey, my one and only tight end. I have him number 8 overall. He makes 11 on our list here. The guy plays banged up last week. He's still close to 100 yards. He has like 7-8 catches. You can basically count on 8 catches, 90 yards at least every week. It seems like he had like one. He had 1 week against the Bills where no one produced on that offense like they usually do. Sometimes you get no touchdowns. Sometimes it's 2 to 3. I mean, you can't really say too much more about him. He's the best fantasy tight end of all time.
Yeah, he's still in my top 12. I mean, positionally, we've talked about this before, but even when you rank him up against wide receivers, he's consistently like a top 5 wide receiver week to week. So the scoring output you get from him and the mismatch you get from an opponent who's starting a tight end that's just not as trustworthy is a huge advantage in fantasy football.
So I only had weeks 5 and 6 turned on the rankings. I was like, wait, Mark Andrews is averaging 21.8 points per game. So he's averaging 11.8 points per game, which is like, he's been fine. Kelsey still hasn't really had like the explosion game yet. He's been this good. He's the number 1 tight end. And let's see, at 70 points, he'd be a top 12 receiver. He'd be right there with Justin Jefferson. So your point stands there. And I think there's bigger weeks coming for Kelsey.
Absolutely. I mean, he had his 1 bad week, and he usually doesn't have those. I think among tight ends, he's only had I don't remember the exact stat, but Brian McDowell tweeted out like 1 or 2 weeks outside the top 24 in his career as a tight end. It's just insane what he produces.
Okay, I was looking at standards, so this makes more sense. 15 points per game for Kelsey, 14 for Mark Andrews because he's had 2 monster weeks. And let me double check. So 90 points. Let's double check where he'd be among receivers. That same spot, he'd be wide receiver 10, just ahead of DK Metcalf.
Yeah, you're just getting what you want. I'm getting tired of naming running backs here, but at 12, to round out the top 12, I have Najee Harris.
Okay, I've got Najee 16.
He's just exactly what we thought we would be getting, which is an every down workhorse and an incredibly inefficient offense. But
he's tied for the league lead among running backs in receptions this year.
Well, I was going to say,
because he had like 1 million in 1 game, yes.
Yeah, if you get 19 targets in a game, I am okay with investing in that running back. He's still doing things highly inefficiently, and I don't think it's the fault of his.
Nope.
It's more than likely the fault of that offense altogether. Out of everybody in that offense, him and Deontay Johnson are the only players I probably want at this point. It's really hard. I mean, I watched Chase Claypool go 2 with 7 targets for 14 yards last week. And the 7 targets is pretty rich considering where Big Ben was throwing those balls.
It's funny for Najee. Was it 2 weeks ago? He had like 100 and something total yards. And it was like the first time he'd really had like a high yardage game. And it was like everyone on fantasy Twitter was like full proud dad. Like, oh my God, he finally got the yards this week. Like that's just so great for him. I'm just so happy for him.
Yeah,
It's been
and
rough.
it's been very rough. And like we said when we were talking about him in the preseason, he's a player where you're just not going to want to watch him play. And it's not to the fault of even his skill, it's to the fault of that offense. I think he's the third highest contact behind the line of scrimmage of any running back in the league. It's exactly what we thought in the offseason. He's getting his, but he's getting it on a ton of volume, which is always concerning unless you're Derrick Henry. Apparently.
So we're still at my number 9 here. And where are we at? I don't know. This is 13 or 14, Johnny. It's too small
13.
on my screen. 13. So at 13, I've got Cooper Kupp. He's the number 1 overall receiver. He has slowed down a little bit the last couple of weeks, but I mean, he had 2 touchdowns the other day. He still had like 20. I think he had like 29 points the other day. He had just had like a normal good like week or 2 before that, and now he was back to. It's not the fault of your size, Johnny. It's because I have the screen pretty small to see my notes. So no worries on your part. It's still playing big on YouTube. But yeah, that offense is just it's a wagon. I think we've gotten far enough in that we can say that it's a good offense. Guys are going to produce every week. I think he's just worthy of a top 10 spot. He's been that good from a real life perspective and then obviously fantasy perspective this year. Not really a ton more to say on Cooper Kupp other than, even Robert Woods is playing a little bit better the last couple of weeks and Kupp is still producing. Like even if Woods is more consistent, like Kupp is still going to get his every week.
Do you know that Kupp and Stafford watch film together a lot?
They also eat breakfast together every morning.
Yeah, they're like best of buds, like college roommates, just hunkering down, watching film.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that yet. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's a good fact. If more people would have known that, I think Kupp would have ran up the rankings preseason.
Yep. Just tell me who's eating breakfast with who in the preseason, and that's my rankings. I had him right here. Actually,
we're gonna need Dalton to go sit outside Patrick Mahomes' house in Kansas City and make sure like McCole Hardman's not going over there, not missing out on like a sleeper opportunity here.
Yeah, I might just have to follow Mecole and be like, please get over to his house now. Babysit Sterling if you have to. But I actually had him right at 13. My concern is Sean McVay's been figured out once before in the NFL, and I do have a slight concern that this offense might be running similar patterns, just at a higher level of production.
Yeah, but they were figured out because they didn't have a pivot. Jared Goff had no pivot. It was like they have to run outside zone because they have to play action pass. Because if we don't play action pass, Jared Goff is not going to move us down the field.
And that's what my hope is. And the other thing, I think Robert Woods is getting more of his, and the guys I have above him are the same as you, Hill and Devontae Adams. Mm-hmm. It's just those guys are better.
So what do you have, Kupp? I have him 9 overall. Obviously, you have him lower.
I have him at 13 overall.
13. Okay.
I have Kelsey at 12 and Kupp at 13.
Okay. All right. So your next guy, 14.
Justin Jefferson is 14 for me. He hasn't really shown up, but he still leads his team in air yards.
He's the wide receiver 9, and it feels like he hasn't had a great season yet.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how you know the player's elite is when you're like, oh man, he didn't do what I want. He's already, he's a top 10 wide receiver. And he leads the team in air yards. Last week, twice, if Kirk Cousins puts the ball where it needs to go, Justin Jefferson's in the end zone for a touchdown, once on a slant, once on a go route. Mm-hmm. So there are points to be had. Adam Thielen had his weird week last week where he went old school and had 100 yards and a touchdown. Yep. But this guy's still the alpha. He still commands a 28% target share. He's right where you want him in all the nerd metrics. This offense is just throwing the ball so much that it's fun. And he's still a guy just producing how you want him to do. He's all we thought he was, and he's reproducing his rookie season.
So I mentioned he's the wide receiver 9. He's been over 80 yards 4 times, never under 65. Like he just shows up and gets you 60 every week at least. So he has such a great floor, and he has a great ceiling. He's been over 100 a couple times, like well over 100. I think was it last week, 2 weeks ago? He had a big time blow up game.
Yeah, last week I think he was close to being over 100. But yeah, it's just what you want out of a player. The consistency's there, and then the blow up games come when you have that consistency.
Yeah, and for me, the guys that are like directly in front of him in current results right now, Jamar Chase, Hollywood Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Deebo Samuel. Like I just believe in Jefferson more than those guys. So basically, for me, where he's at in my ranks, receiver wise, I just pretty much have him jumping those guys and being right there as like wide receiver like 5-6.
Yeah, and he's probably just way more consistent than those guys are on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah, sure. Although Jamar Chase has been pretty darn consistent.
Yeah.
My guy, the guy that he replaced in Buffalo, Stephon Diggs. I had him at 10 overall. He's our 15 overall.
He's my 15 overall. This is going exactly like my rankings. I love this.
Any concerns that I had about Diggs a couple weeks ago just are gone. I think I know he's only wide receiver 18 this year, and it's not going to be as good as it was last year when he was like top 2, top 3, because Emmanuel Sanders is producing more than their 2 last year, I think, and then Dawson Knox is producing more than Dawson Knox did last year, and then you get the occasional Cole Beasley game. Gabriel Davis will catch like a 30-yard pass at every like game or two, but he's still double-digit targets 4 times. He only has 2 touchdowns. I think those touchdowns are going to come. That was like he was just amazing in the end zone last year. I think he's going to catch more touchdowns. Talk about consistent. He is literally over 60 yards every game as well. So it's another guy who rolls out of bed 60 yards every week, and then you hope for a touchdown. You hope for a lot of receptions. And I mean, just the guy, when they showed the replay, I don't know if you saw his touchdown last week, the guy they left out there on the island, he just had no shot covering Diggs in the red zone. He's just such a good player. Allen's a good player. I've got Diggs as a top 10 play rest of the year.
Well, there was a curl route that was actually missed by Allen that would have been a second touchdown and would have just made it even better for him.
Yeah, well, and then are you talking about the play? There was another play where, if it's not the same one you're talking about, he actually had a ball hit off his hands. It would have been a tough catch, but it did hit off his hands in the end zone. Is that the same play or no?
No, that's a different play.
So he legitimately could have had 3 touchdowns there.
Yeah, and it's just everything you want. The first week was tough for that Buffalo offense, and now they look like one of the best in the NFL.
Yeah, that week 1 game against the Steelers is probably going to go down as like a top 3 weirdest result of the entire season. Like that, they moved the ball. They legitimately started with the ball at midfield multiple times, couldn't score any touchdowns.
Yeah. Well, so that's the first game and the only game the Steelers defense was entirely healthy too.
That's true, but man, you wouldn't expect anyone to be able to do that against Buffalo, and they did. So it gave us real pause, and as it turns out, they just played very poorly in that game, I guess.
Yep. And I mean, we're just sticking to the receiver train here, but at 16, I have DJ Moore. I mean, the breakout is for real. The last game, I was asking myself the entire game, where is DJ Moore? Where is DJ Moore? And finally, they started throwing to him. Everybody in that game dropped passes, including DJ Moore.
Did you like the video I sent you today where it's like Sam Darnold throws a nice spiral, and it was a perfect spiral, and then straight to the defender? That was part of what happened to DJ Moore the other day, as Darnold was like 6 of 20, and they were winning that game at one point.
Yeah. And I mean, he's one of those rare players that can elevate quarterback play. He made Teddy Bridgewater look better last year. He's made Sam Darnold look better this year. You just want what he has. He runs intermediate, short, and long routes, and he gets open so frequently and consistently. And he's not one of those receivers that gets forgot about in the red zone. He's the full package, and I mean, the breakout's here, and we're witnessing it.
Yep. Robbie Anderson had a pass bounce off his face last week, so just adding to DJ Moore hype is that Anderson is not exactly having the best season. So my 13, the 17 on this list, where is Nick Chubb on your list? Is he really this low?
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't play this week, which is part of it.
Yeah, but the only reason why he's not higher is because we don't know. I think he'll be back next week, but we're not positive. I'm ranking this like he is because he's going to be a solo act in that backfield for a while without Kareem Hunt, it seems like.
Yeah, I have him at 17.
Shawnee couldn't help but give a big grin at that. Nick Chubb, fantasy manager in Dynasty.
Yeah, but my concern is when he's going to play, and then when are we going to see Baker back? And this offense looks like it's just going to be really working against the grain.
Are we starting getting off track for a minute, are we starting a single player on this Browns offense tomorrow night, Thursday night? D'Ernest Johnson, Odell Beckham, those would be the 2 that you're looking at.
I think we're going to have one of those weeks where, and I saw this, and I believe in this, we're going to be like, wow, Case Keenum and Baker Mayfield are pretty similar. Probably shouldn't give Baker Mayfield a mega extension.
Donovan Peoples-Jones.
One of the flukiest weeks, 2.
Oh, yeah, 2, yeah.
5 for 104 yards and 2 touchdowns.
All right, so Nick Chubb has missed. Oh, John, were you going to say something?
Nope, I was just going to say deal with it. He'll do it again, I hope.
Okay. He's missed a week, and he's the RB14 this year. the guy is he's 80 or more rushing yards every week, and that's just like you can't find that production hardly anywhere running the ball. He has 4 touchdowns, so like good, but it's not like he's had like unsustainable touchdown luck to get him this far playing that amount of games. He has explosion game and then promptly got hurt, unfortunately. 161 rushing yards against the Chargers. As it turns out, the Chargers might be worse than the Chiefs at defending the run. That's just a side note there. No Kareem Hunt for the foreseeable future. He's on, I guess, is it short-term IR? So he could be back in 3 weeks. Is that right? Or is he just on
3
IR?
weeks. Yeah, and I just looked at their buys not till week 13, so you don't really have to worry about those two coinciding either.
Yeah, I would be surprised. I guess I don't know this for a fact, but it seems like calf injuries, and his was definitely more serious than Chubb's because Chubb
It looked like an Achilles pop.
Yeah, I was worried about that because it was like the Jody Fortson play where he just went down. Nothing happened to him. A lot of times it's longer than 3 weeks. It seems like for one where it's like that serious where the guy can't walk off like that. So we'll see. But for as long as Hunt's not there, like Chubb is a top 3 running back, top 5 running back in that range.
Top 5, I would say. And this is ultimate like tilt fest for any fantasy football player. We saw last year Chubb went out for a stint and they did not utilize anybody else in the game. Pretty much it was Kareem Hunt's show. It is going to be Tilt City when next week Kareem Hunt gets totted out there and Demetric Felton gets all the passing work.
You mean Nick Chubb gets
Nick Chubb, and they just give someone else the passing work anyways. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that would just be Tilt City.
The season where Kareem Hunt was suspended for the first 8 games, Chubb, I don't have him in front of me, but Chubb actually got like okay receiving volume in that first 8 games. And that's the other thing I was going to note. He has 5 receptions and he's the RB10 in points per game this year. That is very hard to do that on just 5 receptions. So even if the passing game doesn't go up that much, the guy is already a locked and loaded top 10 play. And you've got Hunt who gets plenty of work inside the 5, sometimes more work than Chubb on a given game inside the 5, which is very annoying when Hunt gets stuffed 2 or 3 times in a row. But yeah, I've got Chubb at 13, and that's literally, if he was playing this week, he would be more like 4 or 5 overall.
Yeah, he would be higher. And still the status of the injury, if we are going to see him next week, it sounds like we're going to.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, where are we at? We're at 18.
Yep, this is my 18. It's Darrell Henderson. You talked about him a little earlier.
Wow, 18. He's not on my list, but I did make a note. He's like my first or second guy left off.
So, I mean, again, part of my rankings, there's a lot of running backs on this list for a reason.
Yeah, you did go running back heavy, clearly. I've got a run of receivers mostly coming up after a couple more running backs.
Oh, yeah, I still have 4 running backs on this list. He's just getting all of the work. Sony Michel, even though they traded for him, seems like an afterthought except for the 1 week. Mm-hmm. Henderson was injured. He's getting the pass catching duties. We said it earlier, 5 touchdowns. This offense is moving in every game but one.
He's played more than 80% of the snaps 3 times, according to Who's That Pokemon on Half Point for Podcast.
Yeah, and those are stats you can trust, even if we say
most of the time you can trust them.
But it's just everything you want in a running back. He's getting every down back duties. He's getting red zone touches, and it's an offense that just moves the ball.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on liking Henderson. He's got, as I mentioned earlier, a great schedule the next couple of weeks too. So he's going to really have a big couple of weeks here, I think. But I just still believe in some of these other guys a little bit more that I have ahead of him. Like we're getting to my 14, 15, 16 here on the list. I have Eckler 15. We know that. Najee Harris is 16, already said. My 14, though, still on the board. This is, I don't know. I don't really even know where to put Saquon Barkley, so I just put him right here because I don't really even know the status of his injury, like if he's going to be back this week, how much longer he's going to be out. But just on the off chance the guy is back in the next week or two, like I still think he's going to finish like as a top 15 overall player, top 18 overall player.
I didn't put him in my top 24, and I just did some research before the pod on trying to figure out what the status of that apple in his ankle was. And as some beat reporters were saying, he should have went on IR and that they think he's going to be out 2 to 3 more weeks. Obviously, he's a superhuman and he comes back from injuries so quick. But the other concern I had when I was just reading what reports I could find is they think when he comes back, it's going to be a situation like the start of this season where he's getting eased back into his all-time role. And so I left him off just because I don't know how much that ankle injury is going to affect his playing time and when he returns.
We'll see. I don't have a note on where he's ranked right now, so let me pull it up real quick. Like he's still the RB23 this season, even though he was eased in and then played,
Basically 4 games.
basically like 2 or 3 like full-fledged Saquon games. I just think even if you get 7 games of like Saquon at the peak of his powers, like that's just going to be enough. Like the guy's just so good.
Yeah, and I mean, I believe that, but then you have guys like I have Darrell Henderson over who's just producing at close to what Saquon was producing when he was playing. I mean, 18 to 19 points a game, and I just would prefer to have that weekly.
Yep, Henderson is 17 points per game. Yeah, I can't really argue it, but it's tough for me to turn my back on Saquon when the last time I saw him on the field, because I didn't watch any of the Cowboys game when he got hurt. So the last time I physically saw him on the field, he was like ripping the heart out of the Saints. I think that's the last time I saw any Giants highlights of him in it.
So my next guy, and he has to make an appearance eventually, not had a good year. 16% target share on the team, but still doing work the best he can, is DeAndre Hopkins.
Yep, he's my next guy too, so we're in lockstep there.
So, I mean, it's not been the start of the year you want from Hopkins. I understand it, and the good news is he's still the favorite weapon here. He's a wide receiver 13 right now, and he's had a couple of games. He's had a 4 and a 6 target game. Those aren't the best, but it's still the alpha wide receiver connected to Kyler Murray, the MVP of the league right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's just not a lot of bad things you can say about him. He still does all the DeAndre Hopkins things. It's not like he's fallen off. They just have other guys they're willing to target. And I think when the Cardinals start playing some tighter games, he's going to be the guy that Murray looks to make the play. Obviously, he had the spectacular play against the Bills last year. I just believe that he's going to be that guy.
Yep. I'm with you. Not much more to add there. Hopkins, even though it's not as good as it was last year, it's like how can you leave a guy that good on that offense off of this list? I have him as 17. He's our 20 here. I think it's time for the Mike Williams disrespect to stop. He's the number 3 overall receiver. I've got him at 18. He's 21 on our list here now. I mean, talk about a guy in that offense that's like Eckler's been great. But I think Mike Williams has been the best weapon in that offense this year. Like that guy, he had one bad game when they all had a bad game, but really he's been very consistent. The injury concerns have really not been there, which has been great. Just wonderful to see him break out and do what he's done this year.
Well, he did have that ankle injury going into last week, and he didn't play a full amount of snaps even when they were playing. So maybe he's my 21 too, to be fair. But maybe they're creeping in, and maybe it's back to Mike Williams just not being around all of a sudden.
I think the bigger takeaway just from putting him in this list isn't necessarily where he is. It's that Keenan Allen did not make this list for me. So if rest of the season, I'm taking Mike Williams over Keenan Allen. Now, with that said, Keenan Allen's still hitting that 1,000 yards. You're gonna.
I don't know. I'm watching that every week. It's a tight race right now.
Oh, is it really? How many yards does he have?
Let's look it up.
I'll look it up.
He has like 550, I think. He's on pace.
While you're looking that up, my 22, you can't keep him off the list. He's on IR. I don't care. It's Christian McCaffrey.
I've got him at 24 just because it was just like the token spot, basically.
I put RB1 son there. But
he was my second guy off, James Robinson.
Ooh, tough for him, tough cut. But yeah, Christian McCaffrey, absolutely electric. The guy, when he plays, is still getting all the work he needs. I know it's not good for owners to see him on the IR, but if you're doing redraft,
it's really not, trust me.
Yeah, if you're doing redraft now and you're getting him at the end of the second, you can probably build a team around knowing he's going to be injured. You can't not take what is the best weapon in all fantasy football aside from Derrick Henry now.
Keenan Allen's on pace for close to 1,200 yards right now, by the way.
Pretty close. Well, there's a bye put in there, and who knows?
Well, I didn't count them. I didn't count him having 69 yards, which is what he's averaging a game, which is nice.
I mean, another Baltimore game, just
okay.
falls.
He gets the Chiefs another time, so I think he's going to have some yards that game, probably.
No, we figured out defense.
I'm with you on McCaffrey though. So he's probably going to be higher than 24, but I felt self-conscious about it after I looked around and didn't see him on anyone else's top 24. It's like, okay, I'm going to give him the token spot. And I was very curious if he was going to be on your list at all, or if you're going to think, wow, like you're just saying that because you have him on your team and you desperately want him to be himself when he comes back. But
I had him at like
be
17 to start and move him down.
He's just going to be a top 3 running back when he comes back. The issue is it's going to be 2 more weeks. And the issue after that is, well, if he gets hurt, if he's out 2 more weeks, and then if something happens again, then what are we doing here? What's
Johnny, do you want to have a conversation about playing No One by Alicia Keys?
I don't know why that popped up. I was just turning up my volume, and apparently my Spotify was linked. But
for any of the podcast listeners,
we may proceed.
Johnny is sharing his screen. And he changed his volume, and No One by Alicia Keys was his last played song.
I might have to make a new video with a picture of Johnny and that music.
That's okay.
Who do you have at 23, Evan?
Hold on, I'm McCaffrey. I did just want to say real quick. He's the RB31. He's played like 2.25 games this year. So just like last year.
That's impressive.
Just like last year, where it's like he was like, top 40 RB forever and played like 3 games. If you actually take his 2 full games that he played, he's averaging, I have it written down, 22.7 points per game. The only guy really in the neighborhood of Derrick Henry, quite frankly, in points per game. So he's just, whenever he comes back, as long as he avoids another injury, which is what happened last year, he's going to be a top 24 guy. My next guy, I have to go scroll back up. It's making me really upset that not all of my remaining guys are going to make this list. I'm going Jamar Chase. It's going to mean someone's going to get left off that I don't want. I'm going Jamar Chase at 22. Like, every time Jamar Chase plays, it's a new record he's breaking for a rookie. Like, he's had the most yards through 6 weeks of any rookie. Like, he's right there with Randy Moss. Like, the guy's just ridiculous. I think, I wish I was going to pull the tweet up. I'll let you talk in a minute and I'll find it. But Field Yates had a tweet where it's like Burrow completed like no passes of X yards or further last year. He's completed a couple this year, all of them to his guy Jamar Chase. Like, some might call it elite chemistry, which is what Field Yates calls it. I might call it Jamar Chase kind of carrying Joe Burrow to a decent season a little bit. I think Chase has been awesome, man. Like, any talk of him not being able to catch the ball, the laces, any of that, it was just like the biggest juke in the history of preseason fantasy football.
He's absolutely great. He didn't make my top 24 again.
Many
running backs.
He's what we were promised, like, in the draft process, basically.
Yeah, it turns out he did know what a football looks like. I mean, he's electric. Turns out AJ Green was the problem with the deep ball in Cincinnati last season. Big surprise there. I love him. He's such a good player. I think he's the second highest rated player in one-on-one coverage in the NFL right now, up there with Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill and Stephon Diggs. Absolutely electric. He's everything and more than promised. If only he could block like Penei Sewell, then he would be absolutely everything.
Hey, well, did you see his blocking on the Joe Mixon touchdown?
I did. He pushed that DB all the way in so Joe Mixon can get in. So you know what? Maybe they could just put him in at left tackle a couple plays.
So here's the stat. Burrow has 4 touchdown passes of 30-plus air yards this season, most in the NFL. They've all been to Jamar Chase. Burrow didn't have a single instance of a pass traveling 30-plus air yards for a touchdown last year. So he is definitely added the dimension that was promised this season in Cincinnati.
Yeah, he's everything we've had, and it just makes a lot of sense that at 24 I'm eating crow because he was a bust. His name is DeAndre Swift.
Yes, I'm so happy Swift made it. He's my 23.
Well, then we have him he's my 23 as well. James Robinson's my 24.
Yeah, I had Calvin Ridley 22. So Ridley's my guy. It's going to get left off.
And I mean, at the end of the day, he's just, the Lions are so bad that he's always in the game because they need to come back.
It would be nice if the Lions would start giving him the ball more in non-garbage time. So all of his touches didn't have to come in garbage time. Like, what are we doing?
Absolutely.
The reason why you're getting behind is because you're not giving your best player the ball. Well, not the only reason, but a reason you're getting behind is because you're not giving your best player the ball until you're behind.
Yeah. And he's the RB6 and half point PPR right now. I think you and I probably agree the only reason he's on here is I'm worried about what they look like in a neutral game script if they like play a team close, because they seem really intent on letting Jamal Williams getting the early down work, even though they've both been pretty ineffectual in those roles.
Yeah, I mean, he's on here just because of the passing game work. Like the rushing is the problem for him right now, and really not kind of like Najee Harris, not his fault. Also, like Najee Harris, he's the guy that Najee was tied for leading the league among running backs and receptions with 34. He catches a ton of passes. The rushing is capping his upside, but still, he's just such a good pass catcher. Is going to run for some yards and touchdowns. He's got to make this list, I think.
Yeah. So that's our list. My honorable mentions: James Robinson. Last week, he got almost all the touches. Carlos Hyde looks like a forgotten factor. Darren Waller and Mark Andrews were the other ones that I had as, because I mean they're having electric seasons. Mark Andrews better than Waller, but it took some blow up games. Those were my forgotten heroes who couldn't make it in the first 3 rounds.
Mm-hmm. So I mentioned James Robinson was my second guy left out. Another one, basically my last one that I considered, it was pick a Bucks receiver. I picked Chris Godwin. I know he's ranked the lowest of the 3 right now, but he's the only one that hasn't had a blow up week, and he's still a top 24 wide receiver. We know Godwin is capable of the blow up weeks, and he's the most consistent of any of those 3 guys. I think Godwin is going to finish as the highest ranked Bucks receiver by season's end.
Absolutely. The name that I think we should at least mention that was left off this list entirely and wasn't even alluded to, Leonard Fournette is having.
I refuse. Man, oh, the Bucks. I was so mad watching that game in a restaurant the other day, watching Fournette carry the ball every time. When my dumb self bet the over on Tom Brady passing yards, Chris Godwin receiving, like I was all in on the passing, and they were just like, no.
He's had a 15, a 17, and a 19-point game the last 3 weeks. He is without Gio Bernard, he's the every down back. Today, Bruce Arians laughed at the thought of trading Ronald Jones, and for the love of God, trade him, please. Anywhere.
It doesn't matter. It really
I
doesn't.
know, but the fact that he laughed at it probably means he's going to do it, because Bruce Arians is notorious for being a liar.
He is a liar. Yep, that probably does make it more likely.
But yeah, that I just have to mention it because I'm not putting him there, but I did see him in a lot of rest of season top 24 rankings, and I just won't do it. Other notable name, man, sucks for DK Metcalf not having Russell Wilson.
DK Metcalf was actually in my top 24, but it got to a point where it's like, okay, when we were talking about other guys, like I can't leave Jamar Chase off because he was higher than DK Metcalf on my rank. So Metcalf, even though he's ranked higher than DeAndre Swift in mine, gets left off just because of the order that you and I were going in there.
And then other than that, I guess if we're just talking big picture, despite the way he's played this season, Patrick Mahomes is still probably the QB1, right? If you're drafting again. I mean, right now, Josh Allen is QB1, but
well, he's actually not. If I'm looking right now, Mahomes has him by 2 points.
I see Josh Allen as 156.3 and Mahomes has 153.9.
I don't know what it is with you and I. We don't look at the same. I'm looking at Fantasy Pros. I'm looking at quarterback rankings, weeks 1 through 6. Mahomes has 161, Josh Allen 159, and it's 26.9 to 26.5.
That's so. I wonder if they're counting the pass catch differently, the touchdown pass that Allen caught last week differently.
Maybe that. Where are you looking at your ranks?
I'm on Sleeper.
Oh, you're on. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I guess you're looking at probably. Well, but that's a 2-point conversion, so I have no idea. But
me neither.
Basically, okay. So they're right. It doesn't matter. They're 1 and 2 separated by 2 points wherever you're looking, whatever your scoring format is. That's probably how close it is.
Yeah, but again, Mahomes just hasn't played even pure to form. I mean, he has 8 interceptions, so that's 16 fantasy points he's left on the floor.
So that is not 16 fantasy points, because some of those were his fault. We can't just say he'd have 0.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, like in total, it's 16 fantasy points he's lost, 2 interceptions.
Yes, but everyone. But let's just take the ones that hit off receivers' hands, and there's 6 fantasy points right there.
Yeah. So I mean, Mahomes is just going to get it together, and the Chiefs are going to figure it out. This is a little therapy session, actually. Now this is no longer a fantasy podcast.
Well, on that note, I don't think we're into any therapy on this podcast. I think that's going to do it for us on episode 51 of the Half Point Per Podcast. Johnny, can we book you for a Sunday morning? Can you get it on your calendar? Can we fit in? I'm waiting for you to unmute. I'm not saying anything until you unmute.
No.
Well, we've lost Johnny to the Costco Empire on Sunday mornings. We'll see. We'll see if we can convince him.
I mean, I will be in the state of California this Sunday.
Are you actually going to Disneyland? That wasn't a joke.
No, I'm going Monday. Yeah.
So were you like actually seriously inviting me to Disneyland? Like you have an extra ticket?
Yeah.
I don't believe you.
All right. Quite rude.
Oh, we'll talk to you guys next week. We will see if Johnny actually does attend Disneyland. You'll have to send me a picture of the extra ticket, Johnny, see if it's actually real. We'll talk to you guys. I think Dalton and I on Sunday. Hopefully all
Sunday.
three. Hopefully all three. Oh, so Dalton and I on Sunday for the stream. Hopefully all three of us again next week. We'll have to figure out a show. Trying real hard to not talk about the injuries. Trying to think of as many topics as possible. Not talk about all of the millions of injuries it feels like are happening.
We're a glass half full podcast.
We try. We certainly try. And we will try again next week in what will hopefully be a fun weekend and a fun show next week. But until then, we will talk to you guys soon.